The galaxy was wide and full of light, but Liara felt only darkness. She belonged to the Elari, a proud race with silver wings, tall figures, and perfect grace. To outsiders, the Elari looked like living art. Their movements were poetry, their voices were music, and their pride was sharper than steel. For them, perfection was not a dream. It was a law. Every child was tested, measured, judged. Those who were strong, beautiful, and flawless were celebrated, but those who showed weakness, even the smallest imperfection, carried shame forever. Liara had been different from the moment she was born. Her wings, instead of shining bright silver, were smaller, a little bent, as if the stars had made a mistake when shaping her. Her voice was softer than the others, not powerful enough to echo in the great halls, and though she tried, though she gave her heart to every lesson, she was always slower, always weaker, always less than what they expected. At first, she hoped it did not matter. She thought her people would see her effort, her kindness, the warmth she carried in her chest. But Elari eyes did not care for kindness. They cared only for perfection, and in their eyes, she failed again and again. The whispers started when she was young. Flawed, broken, unworthy. They followed, her like shadows growing louder as she grew older. She told herself she could endure it. She told herself one day she would prove them wrong, but the day of judgment came. It was in the great crystal hall of her world, beneath the glowing suns. The council stood tall with their shining wings spread wide, their voices proud as they spoke of tradition. One by one, young Elari stepped forward, showing their strength, their skill, their grace. Each was welcomed with cheers. Each was called worthy. Then came Liara. She walked forward with her head bowed. Her wings shook. She tried to hold them high, but they betrayed her, drooping with weakness. The council looked at her, and she saw no warmth in their eyes, only disappointment. One of them spoke. His voice was cold as the void. Liara of the House of Serath, you are unworthy. Your wings are weak, your spirit lesser. You bring shame to the Elari. From this day, you are cast out. The words struck her like blades. She looked into the crowd, searching for a friendly face. Her mother turned away. Her father lowered his head. Friends she had once laughed with looked at her like she was already gone. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can try harder, I can... Enough. The council cut her off. There is no place for you here. Leave and never return. The hall was silent except for the sound of her heart shattering. That night she walked alone to the spaceport. No one stopped her. No one called her name. She carried nothing but a small bag and her broken spirit. She stepped onto a shuttle, meant for the lost, a ship that took outcasts away from the shining cities into the endless stars. As the engines roared, Liara pressed her forehead to the cold glass of the window. She watched her homeworld grow smaller and smaller until it was just a bright point of light. A place that once held her childhood, her dreams, her family. Now nothing but a memory that burned with pain. Her chest ached as she whispered into the silence. Am I truly so worthless? Tears slid down her cheeks, falling on her hands. She thought of the cruel faces, the laughter, the scorn. She thought of the empty future ahead. She was no one now, belonging nowhere. For the first time in her life, she was completely, painfully, alone. The galaxy stretched before her, billions of stars, countless worlds. But to Liara it felt like an endless prison. She closed her eyes, praying for something, anything, that might show her she was more than the word failure. She did not know it yet, but her journey had only begun. Somewhere out there, among the humans she had been taught to ignore, a different kind of heart was waiting. A heart that would see her not as broken, not as shame, but as someone worth choosing. And though she did not believe it now, her exile was not an ending. It was the first step toward something greater. It was the first step toward love. The shuttle drifted through space for days before reaching a small human colony on the edge of the galaxy. It was not a grand world, not shining like the Elari cities she had left behind. This planet was dusty, rough, with wide open skies and machines that looked old and heavy. The ground was not polished crystal, but plain dirt. The buildings were not tall spires of beauty, but simple metal shelters. To Liara, it looked like the end of the galaxy itself. Forgotten, plain, ordinary. Her stomach ached with hunger. Her body felt weak. She had little food left, and her heart carried only emptiness. She told herself she would stay for a short time, just long enough to rest. Then she would leave again, though she had nowhere to go. The colony gates opened as her shuttle landed. A few humans gathered, curious. Their eyes were not cruel like her people's. They were just curious. Some whispered, pointing at her, "Wings." Others shrugged and walked away, and then one man stepped forward. He was not tall like her people. His face was rough, his hands covered in grease and scars from work. His clothes were simple, worn by time. He did not look like a warrior or a leader. He looked ordinary. Yet when he looked at her, there was no judgment, no mocking, only concern. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you all right?" His voice was simple. Just 2 words, but to Liara they felt heavier than all the speeches of her council. She hesitated. No one had ever asked her that before. Not her family, not her people. Not once. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but her throat felt dry. I'm fine," she whispered, though her eyes gave away the lie. The man frowned gently. "You don't look fine. You look tired. Hungry." He gestured to the colony behind him. "Come on. You can rest here. No one will bother you." Liara froze. Every instinct told her not to trust. The Elari had taught her that other species were beneath them, that humans were clumsy and rough, living short lives without grace. Yet this man, this lesser being, spoke with more kindness than all her people combined. Her wings shifted, nervously. Why would you help me? You don't even know me." The man smiled faintly. "Because you need it. That's enough." His name was Daniel, a mechanic, a worker who spent his days repairing machines and carrying heavy loads. To many, he was no one special. But to Liara, at that moment, he was something she had never known. Safe. Daniel led her to a small metal house on the edge of the colony. Inside it smelled of oil, wood, and warmth. The furniture was old, but there was a quiet comfort in it. He placed food before her, simple bread, cooked vegetables, and water. At first, Liara stared at the meal. In her world, food was served with elegance, every dish shining like art. Here it was plain, humble. But when she took her first bite, tears filled her eyes. Not because the food was extraordinary, but because someone had cared enough to give it to her. Daniel watched her quietly, not asking questions, not pressing her to explain who she was or where she came from. He only said, "Eat as much as you like." When she finished, warmth spread through her body for the first time in weeks. Still, her heart was heavy. She sat in silence, her wings curled around her. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You can stay here as long as you need. Nobody's going to push you out." The words struck her deeply. Stay, as long as she needed. No shame, no judgment, just an open door. Liara lowered her gaze, whispering so softly she almost could not hear herself. "Thank you." Daniel smiled again, gentle and calm. "Don't mention it. Everyone deserves a place to rest." For the first time since her exile, Liara felt a fragile spark inside her heart. She did not know if it was hope or something else, but it was something she thought she had lost forever. And though she could not see it yet, this simple act, the kindness of an ordinary human, was the beginning of something greater than she could ever imagine. The days slowly passed in the Esau little colony. At first, Liara kept to herself. She was afraid that if she spoke too much, the humans would see her flaws the same way her own people had. She feared their laughter, their whispers, the cold rejection she had lived through before. But Daniel was different. He never asked her for details she did not want to share. He never looked at her wings with disgust or pity. Instead, he spoke to her as though she were just another person. When he fixed machines, he sometimes asked her to hand him tools. When he cooked his simple meals, he would place an extra plate for her without a word. At first, Liara thought it was kindness born of politeness. But as the days became weeks, she noticed something else. Daniel was not helping her because he felt sorry. He was helping her because, to him, it was natural. One morning, Liara woke early. She found Daniel outside, repairing a broken transport vehicle. The sun was rising behind him, painting the dusty sky with soft gold. His hands were dark with grease, but his expression was calm, steady. She tilted her head, watching quietly. Among her people, work like this would be seen as lowly, unworthy of pride. Yet Daniel worked with quiet strength, not caring how it looked. There was dignity in it, a kind of honesty she had never seen before. When he noticed her, he smiled. "Could use an extra hand?" Liara hesitated. "I don't know anything about machines." "Then it's a good time to learn," he said simply. She stepped closer, nervous but curious. He guided her gently, showing her which tools to use, how to tighten a bolt, how to listen for the hum of the engine. His voice was patient, never sharp, never mocking. Every mistake she made, he corrected with calm words, never with anger. By the time the vehicle came alive again, her hands were dirty, and her face was warm with something she had not felt in a long time. Pride. "You did good," Daniel said, with a small nod. The words struck her deeper than she expected. Good, not worthless. Not shame. Good. For hours afterward, she carried those words in her chest like a secret light. As days turned to weeks, a quiet bond began to grow between them. They shared meals together, sometimes in silence, sometimes with laughter. Daniel told her stories of human life, simple things about his childhood, the colony's struggles, and his dreams of someday traveling beyond this dusty world. Liara listened, fascinated. His stories were not about glory or perfection, but about survival, mistakes, and persistence. Where her people valued beauty above all, Daniel valued effort. Where her people demanded flawlessness, Daniel accepted flaws as part of life. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, Liara found herself speaking of her own past. Her voice trembled as she told him about the council, the cruel words, the way her family had turned away. Daniel listened quietly, not interrupting. When she finished, she expected judgment or perhaps pity, but instead he shook his head gently. "They threw you away because of wings?" His tone carried disbelief. "That doesn't make sense. You're still you. Wings don't change that." His words were simple, yet they broke something inside her, a wall she had built to protect herself from pain. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry in front of him. Tears fell freely, but Daniel did not look away. He sat beside her, his presence steady, his silence kinder than any words could be. When she finally calmed, she whispered, "Why are you so kind to me?" Daniel's answer was quiet, but firm. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially someone who's never had enough of it." Liara looked at him, her heart trembling. She realized then that this human, so ordinary by his people's standards, had given her more than the Alari ever had. He had given her dignity. He had given her a place where she was not judged. She did not call it love yet. She did not dare. But something fragile and precious had begun to bloom inside her chest. A seed of hope. And though she still feared rejection, she began to believe just a little that maybe in this human's eyes she was not worthless after all. The colony had grown peaceful to Liara. She had learned the rhythm of human life, the sound of machines grinding, the laughter of children playing in the dust, the tired but proud smiles of workers returning home at night. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. But peace never lasts forever. One afternoon, the calm sky was broken by the roar of engines. A sleek silver patrol ship descended onto the colony's landing ground. Its surface gleamed. Under the sun, marked with the crest of the Aelari Council, Liara froze. Her wings trembled. She knew that symbol too well. The crowd of humans gathered, curious but cautious. From the ship, 3 tall figures stepped out, Aelari warriors. Their wings shone like polished blades, their posture proud, their faces sharp, with disdain as they scanned the colony. And then their eyes landed on her. One of them sneered. "There she is, the outcast." The words echoed in Liara's chest like a wound reopening. Her throat tightened. Every cruel memory, every whisper of shame, rushed back to her all at once. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs would not move. Tallest warrior stepped closer, his voice sharp as glass. "Liara, you disgrace our kind by showing your face among these creatures. Did you think you could escape your shame by hiding with humans?" The humans murmured at the insult, but none spoke up. All except one. Daniel. He stepped forward, placing himself between Liara and the Aelari. His hands were empty, but his stance was firm. His voice was steady, louder than she had ever heard it. "She's done nothing wrong. Leave her alone." The Aelari laughed cruelly. "Human, you don't understand. She is less than nothing. Even her family turned their backs on her. She is a failure, broken since birth. She deserves exile." Each word struck Liara like fire. She lowered her head, her heart pounding with shame. A part of her believed them, believed she truly was worthless, but then she felt it. Daniel's hand reached back, finding hers, gripping it tight. His voice rang out again, firm and unshaken. "She's not nothing. She's Liara. She works. She learns, she laughs. She's worth more than any of you because she doesn't look down on others the way you do." Liara's breath caught. She looked at him, her eyes wide. His defense was not spoken with anger or pride, but with simple truth. He believed it. He believed in her. The Aelari warrior's face twisted in disgust. "You dare compare us to her? You dare to claim worth in a flaw?" Daniel didn't back down. "I don't need to compare. I see who she is. That's enough." Silence hung heavy for a moment. The humans of the colony stood straighter, their eyes now sharp, their voices rising in murmurs of support. They might not have known Liara well, but Daniel's words carried weight. The warriors looked at one another, clearly displeased. They had expected Liara to be broken, to crawl back in shame. They had not expected a human, ordinary, short-lived, lesser, to stand in her defense with such strength. Finally, the tallest warrior spat at the ground. "Keep your outcast, human. She will never be one of us again. Remember that." With a hiss of engines, the Aelari ship lifted off, vanishing back into the sky. The colony slowly returned to life, but Liara remained frozen, her hand still clutched in Daniel's. Her heart raced, her mind spinning. He had stood up for her. He had faced down her people who had shamed her all her life without fear. And he had called her worth more than them. Tears welled in her eyes, though this time they were not only of pain, they were of something she had thought impossible, hope. When the crowd dispersed, Daniel turned to her, his face gentle again. "Don't listen to them. They don't decide who you are. You do." Liara's voice broke as she whispered, "Why do you fight for me?" Daniel's answer was simple, yet it struck her deeper than anything. "Because you deserve someone to." Her chest ached, not with shame, but with something warm and unfamiliar. Something that scared her, but also pulled her closer to him. And for the first time in her life, Liara wondered if she had finally found the one place where she truly belonged. That night, the colony was quiet. The stars stretched endlessly above, their cold light spilling across the dusty ground. Liara sat outside Daniel's small home, her wings folded close around her like a fragile shield. The words of the Aelari still echoed in her mind. Outcast, worthless, broken. She had heard those words all her life, but today, something had changed. For the first time, someone had stood against them. For the first time, someone had said she was worth something. Daniel. She replayed his voice again and again, the way he had stepped in front of her, the way his hand had held hers, steady and sure. His words had been simple, yet they carried more strength than the cruel speeches of the Aolari Council. And now, as she stared at the stars, tears gathered in her eyes. She had lost everything, her family, her people, her world. But perhaps she had found something greater. Behind her, the door creaked open. Daniel stepped out holding 2 cups of warm tea. His face was tired from the day's work, but his eyes softened when they found her. He handed her a cup and she accepted it with trembling fingers. "You've been quiet," he said gently. Liara stared into the steam rising from the cup. Her voice shook when she spoke. Do you really believe what you said? That I'm not worthless?" Daniel frowned slightly, surprised she would even ask. "Of course I do. Liara, you're strong. You survived being cast out. You're learning, helping, living. That takes more strength than most people I know." Her chest tightened. His words pressed against the walls of her heart, breaking them piece by piece. She set the cup aside, afraid her hands would spill it. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the whisper of wind. Liara's heart pounded as she searched for courage. She had been rejected by everyone she had ever known. To ask what she wanted now felt impossible, yet she could not hold it in any longer. Slowly, she turned to him. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Daniel, I have nothing left. No home, no people, no family. But when I'm with you, I don't feel empty. I feel like I belong." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing, letting her continue. Liara's hands trembled as she clasped them together. She was terrified. Terrified he would laugh or turn away, or give her the same cold rejection she had known all her life. Yet she pushed through the fear because she had to. Her voice cracked as she asked, Will you be my husband?" The words seemed to hang in the air, fragile as glass. Her breath caught, her wings curling tightly around her body as if to shield her from the answer. She had never felt so vulnerable. Daniel stared at her in silence, and every second felt like an eternity. Liara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break. She lowered her eyes, already bracing for rejection. But then she heard his voice. "Yes." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Daniel was smiling softly, his voice steady. "Yes, Liara, I'll be your husband." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of joy, of something she had thought she would never feel. Being chosen. "You mean it?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I mean it. You don't need wings of silver or a council's approval. You're already enough. To me, you've always been enough." Liara covered her face with her hands, sobs breaking free, but this time they were not cries of pain. They were cries of healing. Daniel moved closer, wrapping his arms around her gently, holding her as if she were something precious. For the first time in her life, Liara felt whole. She had not been cast away into nothingness. She had been led here, to this human, to this moment. The galaxy had taken everything from her, but in return, it had given her something greater, a love strong enough to rebuild her broken spirit. As she leaned against Daniel's chest, listening, to the steady beat of his heart, Liara whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." Daniel held her tighter, his voice calm but certain. "Always." And under the endless stars, Liara realized she was no longer an outcast. She was no longer unwanted. She was his. The night air was cool, carrying the soft hum of machines from the colony. Liara sat close to Daniel, her wings folded gently, her eyes still wet from tears. The question she had dared to ask still echoed in her mind. "Will you be my husband?" And his answer had changed everything. Yes. It was such a simple word, yet it had broken the chains that had bound her heart for so long. Liara could hardly believe it. For years, she had carried rejection like a curse. She'd been told she was worthless, that no one would ever want her. Her own family had turned away. But this human, this man with rough hands and a gentle voice, had chosen her. Without hesitation, her breath trembled. "Why, Daniel? Why would you say yes to me? I am nothing. I am—" "Stop." His voice was firm but not unkind. He turned to face her fully, his eyes steady and clear. "You are not nothing, Liara. You're someone strong, someone brave. You've survived things that would have broken many. And you're kind, even when life has been cruel to you. That's worth more than anything." She stared at him, her chest tight, her heart racing. His words were not fancy or poetic like the speeches of the Alari Council. They were plain, simple. But because they were simple, they felt true. Daniel reached out and took her hands in his. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. "I don't care about wings or councils or traditions. I care about you. If you'll have me, then yes, I'll be your husband." Liara's tears returned, but they were different now. They were not born of sorrow, but of joy so deep it frightened her. Her whole body shook as she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and calm, as if promising her she was safe. For a long while they sat in silence beneath the stars. The galaxy above glittered, cold and endless. But here on this small, dusty colony, Liara felt warmth. She felt something she had never known before. Home. As the minutes passed, Daniel spoke again, his voice quiet but certain. "The Alari may have rejected you. They may have called you broken, but they don't see what I see. To me, you're whole. To me, you're perfect as you are." The word perfect made Liara's chest ache. She had chased perfection all her life, never reaching it. Yet here was a man who saw her flaws, her scars, her broken wings, and still called her perfect. Not because she matched an image, but because she was herself. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "No one has ever said that to me." Daniel smiled, softly. "Then let me be the first of many times." Liara closed her eyes, holding on to the moment like a fragile treasure. For the first time, the word love brushed against her heart. She had been afraid to name it, afraid to hope for it. But now in Daniel's arms she could feel it growing, steady and strong. The days that followed were different. Where once she had carried herself with shame, now she began to walk taller. She smiled more, spoke more, and laughed at Daniel's simple jokes. The humans in the colony noticed the change. They began to see her not as a stranger, but as one of their own. Some still whispered, but many welcomed her with warm nods and friendly words. Daniel stayed by her side as he always had. Whenever doubt returned, whenever old memories tried to claw at her heart, he was there with his quiet strength. "You're not alone," he reminded her again and again. And slowly, she began to believe it. One evening, as the sun set in golden light, Liara stood beside Daniel and looked at the horizon. Her voice was soft but filled with hope. "When I asked you to be my husband, I was afraid you would laugh. I was afraid you would turn me away like everyone else." Daniel shook his head gently. "I'll never turn you away. I promise." Liara smiled, tears glistening in her eyes once more. For the first time in her life, the word future no longer frightened her, because now she would not face it alone. And as she leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, she whispered the words that had been locked inside her heart. "I think I love you." Daniel's hand squeezed hers, his voice steady. "I love you too." The stars above shone brighter that night, as if the galaxy itself was listening. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Liara was no longer the quiet shadow she had been when she first arrived. She smiled more now. She helped the colony children learn about the stars, telling them stories of constellations she remembered from her homeworld. She worked beside Daniel, her hands no longer afraid of mistakes, her heart no longer heavy with shame. For the first time in her life, She felt alive. But peace never lasted long when the Aolari were involved. One morning, the sound of engines filled the sky once again. Another Aolari ship descended, larger than the last. Its silver wings gleamed in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the colony. The humans stopped their work, gathering to see what would happen. Liara felt her heart tighten. The ship opened and more warriors stepped out, their armor polished, their eyes filled with disdain. At their center stood an elder, one of the council who had once declared her unworthy. His voice rang across the colony. Liara of the House of Serath, you dare live among humans? You dare call this place home? The old fear stirred in her chest. She remembered the cold crystal hall, the sneers, the words that had broken her spirit. But this time was different. She was not alone. Daniel stepped beside her, his hand brushing against hers. His voice was steady. She belongs here. She belongs with us. The elder's wings flared. Silence, human. She is Aolari. She will return with us to face judgment. Liara's wings trembled, but then she drew in a deep breath. She thought of Daniel's words, his promises, his love. She thought of the warmth she had found here, the place where no one judged her for bent wings or soft voice, and then, for the first time, she stepped forward on her own. No. Her voice carried across the colony, stronger than she expected. All eyes turned to her, the humans, the Aolari, even Daniel. Her heart pounded, but she stood tall. I am not yours to judge anymore, she said, her voice shaking but growing steadier with each word. You cast me out. You told me I was nothing, and I believed you. For so long I believed your lies. The elder narrowed his eyes. You shame us further by defying us. Liara lifted her chin. No, I free myself by defying you. She turned, her gaze finding Daniel. Her voice softened, but it carried across the silence. I am Liara, wife of Daniel. He chose me when no one else would. He gave me a place when you left me with nothing. And with him, I have found more than I ever had among you. The colony stirred with murmurs of support. The humans looked at her not with pity but with pride. Daniel's hand found hers again, gripping tight, steady as stone. You call me worthless, Liara continued, her eyes burning with tears. But here, I am more than you could ever see. I am not your failure. I am his family. And I will not return with you. The elder's face twisted in anger. You would choose a human over your own kind? Liara smiled faintly, though her voice trembled. Yes, because he is more my kind than you ever were. The Aolari warriors hissed, their wings flaring in outrage. But they saw the humans standing together behind Daniel and Liara, ready to defend their own. And they saw the fire in Liara's eyes, the fire of someone who had finally broken free of chains. The elder's voice was sharp, bitter. So be it. Remain in exile then. You will never walk among us again. Liara's tears fell, but this time they were not of sorrow. They were of release. She straightened her back, wings open, no longer trying to hide them. I do not need to. With that, the Aolari turned, retreating to their ship. The engines roared, and soon they vanished into the sky, leaving only silence behind. Liara let out a long, shaking breath. Her body trembled, but Daniel's arm slipped around her shoulders, steadying her. She leaned into him, her heart lighter than it had ever been. The humans cheered quietly, clapping her back, offering nods of respect. She was no longer the outcast who had arrived broken and afraid. She was one of them. That night, under the stars, Liara sat beside Daniel and whispered, I thought exile was the end of my life, but it was the beginning. They rejected me, but you chose me, and that is all I need. Daniel smiled, pressing his forehead gently against hers. You'll never be alone again.